Hey, good morning, everybody. Scott Luton and Steve Rose here with you today. Welcome to this special event, Veterans in Logistics, hosted by our friends at Redwood Logistics. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Scott. Nice to see you.
It is so great to see you. And again, I really appreciate what you and your colleagues are doing, investing in these critical conversations. For our audience, welcome to all of you. We want to hear from you. Use the chat function or Q&A function to share what's on your mind here today. But a lot of folks may not know Steve Rose here is a Marine veteran. And he also serves as Director of Strategic Sales with Redwood. And Steve, it's really important to be investing in conversations like this today, right?
Absolutely, Scott. It's great to have these type of conversations about veterans in general, and then also veterans in logistics is what we do today.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you taking time out and co-hosting with me here today. We're going to have you back on for the middle segment. But to that end, folks, we're going to be focusing on three main areas today. We're going to start with a great primer on logistics trends. Then we're going to move into Steve and a great friend and colleague tackling transition tips for veterans. And then we're going to wrap with sharing some more really important information, universally important information on mental health and wellness tips. So stick with us throughout the next 90 minutes. And you're going to hear from a lot of experts here today, but again, we want to hear from you. So use those chat functions, submit your comments and your questions. Hey, one more quick note, Steve. And we've talked a lot on the pre-show about a powerful nonprofit called Vets to Industry that's serving our veteran community, right?
Yes, sir, we have. So it's a great industry.
It's a powerful group. So folks, if you're a veteran or if you're currently a transitioning military member or even a military family member, you can check out vets2industry.org. Wonderful array of resources. Steve, I think I shared with you, they first hit my radar back in about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, when a Marine veteran and his family was living in their car during the height of the pandemic. And they were able to connect with Vets to Industry, who found them a grant organization that got them into an apartment. So, those are kind of things, outcome-driven results that we're all looking for, right, Steve?
Yes, it is. That's exactly what we want to do and exactly why we're doing this program today.
That's right. So if you're a veteran transitioning military member, check it out for resources at vets2industry.org, or for other viewers, attendees, folks may be in position to make a donation. Hey, Vets to Industry, the nonprofit, they sure really could use it. There's a QR code over my left shoulder, I think it is, Steve, that you can use, or you can go to vets2industry.org. Okay, Steve, we're ahead of schedule. Are you ready to dive right in?
Let's lock and load.
All right. So, Steve, we'll see you here in a moment.
All right. Thank you.
So I want to welcome in our special guest for our first segment here today. It's an overview of logistics trends with my dear friend, industry guru, subject matter expert, the mover and shaker, Kathy Morrow Robertson, founder and president of Logistics Trends and Insights. Kathy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. We've collaborated quite a bit over the years. You're a go-to resource for folks across global supply chain. And really, I'm tickled that you're here today sharing your expertise with my fellow veterans and military members, military family members, you name it.
Oh, I appreciate you asking me. I mean, veterans are near and dear to my heart. I have a number of family members that are veterans. So yeah, hats off and a big thank you to all of y'all.
I love it. Love that. All right. So folks, Kathy is about to share some of the trends that you should have your finger on the pulse of across the wide world of logistics here momentarily. But again, use that chat function, use the Q&A function. We want to hear from you. We'd love to hear your observations or your questions. There's going to be time here in about 15 minutes. We're going to be posing a couple of questions to Kathy. So we're here for you. So with that said, Kathy, just want to open it up. You've got your finger on the pulse of the logistics industry more than so many others across the globe. What's some of the things that are on your radar that you think our listeners here should be aware of?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, where to begin, right?
Right.
So let me back up just a minute and just warn folks, I've got some housework going on at the moment. So you're going to hear noise. I bet you. Of machinery and such going on in the background, but it's a great lead in to supply chain angst. Okay.
That's right.
So the pandemic happened back in 2020. We all, the world shut down, and then, oh, boom, there it goes. And then as we got closer to the second half of 2020, consumers started spending money, because we couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
So what better to do than to let our fingers do the tapping on the keyboards? And e-commerce sales skyrocketed, demand skyrocketed. We all decided we wanted to renovate our homes. We wanted to buy furniture and such as that. And it started a snowball effect, basically. Everyone wanting all of this. Supply chains had a hard time with all of this. Transportation, there was limited capacity for all modes of transport. Warehouses full. And prices of lumber skyrocketed because the demand was there. Plus, a lot of us had to wait as consumers. We had to wait a couple of months to get our furniture. I know I had about a 2-month wait last year for my chair.
Right.
Yeah, which is pretty good considering I was given a 7-month waiting period for another one.
Well, to that end, Kathy, it seems like the phrase that rose to prominence beyond the "Hey, you're on mute," which we all know is said like every hour these days. But the other one is, "Hey, where's my stuff?" To your point.
Exactly. So, some of the trends that you asked me to highlight, pick out 5 trends. Oh, okay. So that was difficult because there's so many of them. Higher supply chain costs. First of all, I mentioned lumber being expensive. Yeah, my project out here, it's costing me 20% more than what it would have cost me last year or year before that. Yeah, that's what the contractor told me. He said, that's still not bad. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe in your pocketbook it's not, but it hurts mine. So these higher supply chain costs, that's a big one. Not only for us, the consumer, feeling that end part, but manufacturers, retailers, and such. And the CSCMP comes out with their annual State of the Logistics report, and they highlighted some of these increases. Air freight cost, 19.2% increase year over year. Trucking, double digits. Truckload was up 10.2%. LTL, less than truckload, up to over 13%. So, and ocean freight, my favorite, which is, you see this picture back here, up over 26%.
Wow.
Yeah. We're a consumption economy, and a lot of the goods are imported from Asia. Now,
hey, really quick, Kathy, if I can, on the front end, you mentioned CSCMP.
Yeah.
Hey, to our audience members, if you're looking for ways to build your network, check out the industry associations. Kathy does a lot of work with the Journal of Commerce, which is a great, powerful organization. CSCMP, I believe, is a Council of Supply Chain Managers and Professionals. I think is that what the acronym stands for. Great way to join. They may have some veterans discounts, right? Military member discounts. And again, part of the name of the game beyond Kathy, increasing your market intel knowledge is increasing that network. So it's a great tip there, Kathy.
Exactly. So not only did the cost increase, like I said, it's started in manufacturing. Those raw materials were expensive, lumber. It just kept building to the end consumer. And, last year we didn't mind. We were bored,
Right.
we were buying stuff right and left. Well, this year it started jacking up the inflation. Okay. So as a result, we've got inflation issues, highest in over 40 years.
Wow.
Which it's hard to believe that's like the 1980s, early 1980s, but it
seriously, it feels like that should be the 60s still, Kathy, right?
No, seriously. Yeah. So we've got issues. So fast forward. Now, last year, it was the retailers and the manufacturers saying, give us the inventory at any cost. We'll pay them. Just get them to us on time. Okay, that on time issue was a struggle, but they did get it eventually, get their goods. And we were consuming those inventories right and left. Well, this year kind of put a brakes onto all of that. The inflation is high, like I said. We've had issues, the Ukraine-Russia conflict has posed a big hit. At the same time, consumers have finally started going, whoa, time out here. This stuff's costing more. And retailers are now sitting on a lot of inventory that they're trying to unload. I mean, we're talking double percent,
right?
Like over 20% year over year inventory carrying costs. So if y'all saw the Walmart announcement last night or night before,
they're
cutting their profit outlook as they're trying to basically unload the merchandise, because most of us are spending more on food, the necessities. So, we have this slowing, weird, wonky economy thing going on,
Hey, really quick, Kathy.
Inflation. Yeah.
If you could speak, you're talking inventory, retail inventory specifically, and you also mentioned demand on the kind of the front end, because we're all, as consumers, especially during the shutdown, we wanted to buy stuff and do something, right? Speak briefly. Some folks here may not be familiar with peak season, right? And why some of these inventory levels are where they are. Can you speak briefly to that? Oh, you got, sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead.
You're jumping ahead. Oh, that's okay. No. So peak season. So we've got a couple of peak seasons. So right now we're in that ocean freight peak season where, retailers, manufacturers are getting their goods in before the end of the year. End of the year is the traditional parcel peak season. It's that holiday season where you see, the UPS package cars, the FedEx vans, post office, all scurrying around delivering our packages, hopefully on time. They kind of stumbled back in 2020 because, remember, we were all not wanting to go to the stores. We were all ordering everything online, and then it was just way too much for all of their networks to handle. Last year, it was better. This year, I expect it to be even better. That's not a word, but it's
I'll go with it.
Better. Because there is more capacity in their networks. UPS and FedEx have been investing in automation in their facilities to get the goods out faster and faster. So we're looking at probably a close to normal peak season this year.
Great news.
Well, now.
What do we know?
Is Kathy talking, so we'll see about that. Because others, from what I've heard, is saying that it's going to be a very long peak season. I don't see it quite like that because we've got the stores open. We're all we're going to the stores more and more now. Despite there still being COVID. Now there is still COVID out there, but we're vaccinated. We're double, triple, quadruple vaccinated. So we want to go out shopping, but we're also ordering online. So that whole omni-channel is a big thing these days, where it gives us the consumer the option where, let me do my research online and let me pick it up at the store. Or let's drop off my return that I ordered online to the store. So,
so let's two quick questions for omni-channel, because I think that's an important notion, certainly a word for our listeners to embrace, because that speaks to, as you said, meeting the customer wherever they want to be met, right? Whatever channel, right?
Exactly. So what omni-channel is, just in case folks aren't familiar with that term, is when the retailer's online their website is linked to their physical stores through technology. So if you go to Target, for example, and you noticed online that they had this really pretty pink sweater. And so and it's not there in the store, but the salesperson's like, well, let me check here. Oh, it's available online. I can have it shipped here to the store and you can pick it up, or I can have it sent directly to your home. No extra charge. That's the key. You don't want to pay shipping. So they're able to do that because they invested in like inventory, warehousing management systems, transportation management systems. They're all talking to each other behind the scenes. So that's kind of like in a nutshell what that is.
I really appreciate you sharing. And then the other thing that you mentioned, I know you do a lot of great work with the Reverse Logistics Association, another one of those powerful associations out there. And that's all about returns management, reverse logistics, which is a bit, as Tony Sciarrotta would say, a bit of the dark side of global supply chain, if I quote him correctly. If you could just for a minute kind of connect the dot, because we might have some folks here that want to get into the reverse logistics side.
Oh my gosh, that would be wonderful, because that is the dark side. So when you hear us talk about the last mile, the final mile, okay, yeah, don't believe it, because there's no such thing as a final mile in supply chains. It's circular. Okay. So yeah, that package may be dropped off on my front porch when it's completed. But I may decide I don't like this. So I can call a post office, or I can to have them come pick it up, or I can go drop it off at a store. That's not the end of that process, because that sets up the reverse supply chain. So yeah, getting it to that store, and then the store takes it to a warehouse. And from that warehouse, there's a group of folks that are doing what's called a disposition, trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do with this item? Can we put it back in for resale? Can it be recycled? Can it be repaired? What have you? That's the reverse logistics component. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And if I may, please, if you're interested in reverse logistics, please consider joining the RLA community. Check it out, rla.org. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Scott, for that shameless plug.
Well, it doesn't get enough attention. And when you don't get enough attention, I'll use a phrase Greg White hates, best practices. Tip of the hat to Greg, but we got to proliferate out information, how to improve various aspects of global supply chain. And I appreciate where some of y'all's work there comes into play. All right, so we're coming down to home stretch. Quick reminder for our audience. Hey, we're here for you. We've got a Q&A panel open. We've got our chat panel open. If you got comments or questions, we'll be hitting Q&A with Kathy here in just a minute. We'd welcome that. Okay, so Kathy, before we get into Q&A, some final thoughts from you to our listeners here.
Well, I can certainly do some more shameless plugs if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I think it's really, really important to be mindful, to pay attention the supply chain trends. I mean, whether it's transportation, warehousing, inventory, just demand in general, it's changing on an almost daily basis. I mean, I hate to use the word uncertain, but it is an uncertain time period that we're facing. It's unprecedented. I'm active on social media. I try to share as much as I can out on Twitter of the various trends. I also, on behalf of the Journal of Commerce, I do a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn called Freight Forward, where I take most of their articles and sprinkle in a few other really great publications, such as Supply Chain Dive, Business Insider, Air Cargo World. Yay, because I write for them as well. And I pull it all together to tell a supply chain story, because we tend to look at it in a siloed way, and we shouldn't. We need to be looking at it as a whole and see where we can improve.
I appreciate you sharing all that. Two quick thoughts come to mind. Number one, for our listeners, here we're kind of focused on logistics, right? Which is the backbone of global supply chain. But what Kathy's kind of speaking to a couple times throughout her segment here is, supply chain has really grown in terms of its scope and how it's defined, right? Procurement, manufacturing, warehousing, returns, of course, transportation being that backbone, transportation logistics, but it's very holistic now. So I think that's an important learning point for our audience here And then secondly, to your point, Kathy, I think one of the reasons why we really wanted to connect you with our listeners here is, you're gathering a lot of information, a lot of different places. You're on a bunch of these analyst calls. And then what I love about you is you distill it down into what really the newsworthy messages that folks need to pay attention to. So I appreciate what you do. Folks, check out that Freight Forward. Information's power. And if you're interested in logistics, there's a lot of different sources, but that resources, that's one. Kathy mentioned a handful of others. Okay. So we're going to move into Kathy. It's Q&A time with Kathy Morrow Robertson. Are you ready?
Bring it.
Did y'all hear that? She said, bring it. So y'all bring your questions, your comments. I've got a couple here. So one of the stories you wrote on in the recent, I think this week's edition of Freight Forward was what's going on at the Port of Oakland. I mean, there's lots going on across the ports, but in simple terms, right? Simple, succinct terms. Can you share some thoughts about what's going on there?
Well, okay. So first of all, the issues have been resolved as of yesterday. Yay. At least we hope for the time being. So what happened at the Port of Oakland was there was protests that broke out last week in regards to California's passage and implementation. Well, they haven't really implemented it yet, of what's called AB5. AB5 is, wow, it's so complicated.
Employment classification legislation. Is that a simple way of putting it?
Yeah. So it's basically an attempt to, it was an attempt to help out those contractors. If you think about it, pre-pandemic, you had the gig workers putting in an awful lot of hours, not getting paid very much, getting paid by the delivery and such. So, California, bless them, thought that this law would benefit all these contractors, be beneficial. However, I don't think they really took into account there's like over 70,000, according to the California Trucking Association, 70,000 independent trucking firms.
Wow.
In California. They're independent, probably quite a few of them for a reason. They enjoy the independence, perhaps not all. We're not sure. I hate to lump everybody into one group, but the unknown, not really understanding what the state of California, how they're going to implement it, caused a scene at the port. There was demonstrations from a variety of truck drivers. Some of the dock workers there at the port couldn't cross the lines for really the main reason for that was because of security perspective. I mean, in their contracts, it's like if they don't feel safe, don't do it type of thing. So as a result, a lot of stuff didn't leave the port.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that built up at the port, from an import perspective as well as an export perspective. But there's a great article from the JOC that came out, I believe, yesterday, saying that things have quietened down, and some of the terminal operators said it's probably going to take about 3 days to catch up.
Okay.
The backlog.
That's great news.
So that's great news. Good. That's good.
I think it's caused attention to a couple of different things. I appreciate you giving us kind of in a 2-minute version of what went on and the good news there. But these ports, these unique ecosystems that the ports are, it's fascinating. For our listeners, that's a great, if you want to uncover a lot about what goes on, these critical points, nodes as a part of global supply chain, the ports would be a great thing to study. And then secondly, workforce in general. We could set up a 3-hour conversation focused on workforce across global supply chain to begin with. Yeah. And fascinating discussion there. Okay. One last thing about the ports. Got 2 more questions for you. We're going to get in before 12 noon. Can you just talk about you've written previously about the gains that East Coast and the Gulf Coast ports have been making here when it comes to Asian shipping volume. Can you touch on that for a minute?
Sure. So and this is true across all transportation modes. Just keep that in the back of your mind. So there's been a shift in cargo that was originally destined towards the West Coast, but it's now showing up in the Gulf and in the East Coast because last year, all these imports that were coming in from Asia kind of hit the port of LA and Long Beach pretty hard. There was like over 100 ships at one time waiting to come into the port of LA or possibly Long Beach. But regardless, it was huge buildup. That started causing the delays from the port all the way to our front porch. And as a result, shippers started wising up going, oh, we need to be diversifying our ports. So that's when you started seeing the shift in containers, the volumes being moved to other ports. And here on the East Coast, Savannah's been a very strong recipient of those containers, as has the Port of Houston. So that's happened from the ocean side. We also learned that from the parcel perspective early on in the pandemic that, you can't necessarily rely solely on the post office, FedEx, and UPS. We need more. We need more options. And you've seen a lot of shippers diversifying that last mile as well.
Thank you for that quick perspective. And as Kathy referenced here on the East Coast, Kathy and I both are based in the metro Atlanta area. So if you're ever in town and you want to explore some great barbecue or a great vineyard, as Kathy's becoming more and more known for, y'all reach out. On that note, Kathy, there's so much going on. I really appreciate you spending some time here on the front end, kind of level setting and sharing some of the things that our listeners should be, keeping in front of them. Let's make sure folks know how to connect with you and of course, sign up for the Freight Forward. How can folks connect with you?
Well, you can catch me out on Twitter. I'm at CM Robertson 06. I probably share more out there than I should, but you get to see great photos of the vineyards that I visit. Lots of them in North Georgia. LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. That's where you'll find the Freight Forward newsletter. So just connect with me there. I can send you the link to it. It's a fun project. I enjoy doing that newsletter. Or you can catch me on email, cmrobertson06@gmail.com.
Love it. Hey, if I can ask you, as we rotate out, move to the second segment, if you could use, Kathy, either the Q&A or the chat function and drop in your LinkedIn profile so folks can be one click away from connecting with you and Freight Forward, that'd be great. Let me make it easy, huh?
That's a good idea. I'll send the link to the Freight Forward. Duh, I didn't think
Awesome.
about that. So thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you do, helping to inform global practitioners. Kathy Morrow Robertson, founder and president of Logistics Trends and Insights. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right, folks. That was just the starting point, right? That was, if you're a baseball fan, that was our leadoff hitter. If you're an Atlanta Braves fan, that was our Otis Nixon of today's event. So big thanks to Kathy there. But moving right along, I want to dive into this middle segment, the second segment, focused on transition, right? Many of you out in the audience, whether you're veterans that have already made or are making your transition, or if you're current military members getting ready for your transition, I think there's lots of learnings and perspective here in this middle segment that will be helpful. So I want to welcome in our two panelists for this second segment. Steve Rose, Director of Strategic Sales. Say that 3 times fast, with our host, Redwood Logistics, also a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Steve, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you again. And our friend here, Carlos Rivera Madrid, Logistics Coordinator with Orbis Corporation. Carlos is also a veteran of the United States Navy. Carlos, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Doing great. Off to a wonderful start. Kathy brought it. I know both of y'all are about to bring it. And really, this middle segment really resonates. As much as I love logistics and trends, and as much as I love the mental health and wellness tips that we're going to focus on in the third segment, I look back at when I was transitioning as an Air Force veteran and struggling. And I really wish I'd had conversations like this one, like all day long, to look back and draw on. But I want to have both of y'all share various aspects of your transition. I'm going to start with you, Carlos. When you look back, what surprised you the most while transitioning from the Navy?
I would say how much support there is from private businesses. I mean, I knew that there were transition groups that would help you out and all that, but once I started reaching out to different companies for the hiring process, I started, I would say like about 6 months prior to separating. I started kind of reaching out, to companies on LinkedIn, just seeing what was going on. And I mean, there were just an immense amount of people just trying to reach out, talk to me, say, hey, what are you doing? What are your plans? And I mean, the support out there is just like immense. It's great.
That's wonderful to hear. And I think you also shared there something folks should really take to heart starting 6 months out. I can tell you, and Steve, I'd love to get your thoughts here. I can tell you, I bet I started a month out just assuming it's going to be easy to find a job, but that 6 months is critical. Right, Carlos?
Absolutely.
So, Steve, same question. What surprised you the most when you were transitioning from the military a little bit earlier than Carlos?
Yeah, a couple days. So it was a little bit different back in 1980 when I got out of the Marine Corps. One of the things that surprised me most, the jobs that I was looking at, and I kind of started late myself because I was thinking about going back to college and becoming a commissioned officer, and I opted just to go ahead and separate and get out of the Marine Corps. And I decided to start talking to different industries, and whether it's going to be logistics or a couple other things. I started looking around, and there wasn't a whole lot of jobs. So I guess what surprised me the most was I should have probably been a little bit more prepared, like Carlos, and done it 6 months in advance, because I was kind of on the bubble if I was going to stay in or stay out. So I think if you are getting out, if you're got a few months to do that, reach out, use vets to industry type websites, and get yourself prepared to start working through that transition.
Excellent advice. And I would just add, it seems I haven't gone out and conducted due diligence and dove into it from a research standpoint, but it seems like here in 2022, there's a lot more clearinghouses and organizations like a vets2industry.org that are willing to help with at not charging any, fees, which is really important, especially if you're on a budget, like I know I was as I was exiting the Air Force. So Carlos, back to you. Let's talk about, there's so many challenges. I mean, Veteran Voices, our podcast here at Supply Chain Now, dedicated to so many of these transitioning journeys, and all the conversations I've had, I've heard so many common challenges and lots of unique challenges related to transitioning. What stands out to you when you think of the challenging aspects of your transition?
I would say one area where I kind of found it different. It was adapting to the challenges that I see on my day-to-day work. So I work international logistics and I do exports. When I was in the military, I was used to, always getting everything almost overnight. And then I came out here and there were backups for like a month or two. So it took me a little bit of time adapting to that work shift, from, hey, I can snap my fingers and get it tomorrow, to you're going to have to get in line and wait, So I would say that was kind of a challenge, but after a few months, I was able to overcome it and adapt to it.
I have no doubts of that, Carlos, having spoken to you a couple of times here prior to today's show. On a broader note, though, kind of what you're speaking to is just the difference of how operationally, how logistics happens in the military versus kind of the private sector. And I think that's a really important learning point. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Carlos. Steve, same question for you. When you think of challenges that you experienced while transitioning, the new learnings you had to go through or what have you, what comes to mind?
Yeah, when I was in the Marine Corps, when you got assigned to a task, you had good training and good leadership that explained to you what to do, and you had team members that would help you to do that. You were part of a squad or part of a platoon or something that would lead you through that. So when I first got into the private sector, I was a little bit more on an island, and which was a little bit different for me, where I didn't have the support system, and some of the people didn't really know who to go to. So I was navigating that stuff internally, where it just didn't come naturally, or there was already a set thing in place there. But so now here, that's one of the advantages that we have at Redwood here, is that we've developed that training and everything else for anybody that comes to our organization, especially veterans. So that's all been done now. But when I first got out, it was a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, that's such a great call out, Steve. You make me think of my time. Training is oftentimes mandated in the military, right? I was a data analyst in a maintenance group, and I remember, my supervisors were going to make sure I studied my training material. So I took the exams and I passed. And if you failed, you're going to double up. You're going to get yourself trained up. And it's so interesting you bring that point up, because in the private sector, with many organizations, it sounds like not with Redwood, but with many organizations, training is whenever they've got time and budget for it.
Right.
So that's a great call out there. Carlos, you want to add before I move to the next question? Anything you want to add when it comes to, training, get trained up?
Yeah, no, I would say I experienced the same thing here at Orbis. I mean, training has been from day one. They were like, hey, we're going to get into training. We're going to send you to receive seminars or webinars. We're going to make sure that you know everything so you can be successful here and outside of the organization. I mean, I think it's amazing.
Man, I love that. Between that common cultural value between Redwood and Orbis is so important. There's so much to our listeners and our audience members. There's so much of that you're not going to find out there, and oftentimes it's going to be in your own hands to kind of get trained up and develop professionally. All right, so Carlos, let's stick with you. Despite all the changes related to transitioning and getting squared away here in the private sector, what's something that's helped you adapt to all the change of scenery?
I would say keeping an open mind. I knew that, transitioning, typically you're the SME at whatever you're doing, right? So you come back to a new organization, it's different. I mean, I did the same job for 5 years in an organization and I knew everything, the ins and outs. Here, I had to learn again, so keeping an open mind and knowing that, hey, just because you did it before doesn't mean you can't learn more. So be open and be willing to learn.
I love that. And I doubt my oldest daughter, Brantley, is tuned in here today. If she was, I'd say, Carlos, say that a little bit louder for Brantley in the back, especially when it comes to what she'd like to eat. But keeping that open mind is so universal. I appreciate you sharing. Steve, what about you? What helped you adapt to all the changes?
Well, a lot what Carlos said. You got to have an open mind and you got to be adaptable. So when I got out and got into an organization there, I needed to learn as much about the organization. It's just like I was out on recon, right? It's what we used to call it in the Marine Corps. So we went out, we reconned the situation, learned from that, and then made our plans to get the job done by learning around your environment. So you had to do a lot on your own because when I was out, it's a little bit earlier than Carlos, but here at Redwood, we've developed Redwood University, which really helps our new hires get, tell me into the transition and do it well. But I had to kind of do that a little bit myself by doing it just by being adaptable and learning from people around me and just being a sponge, just learning.
Adapt and overcome, right?
Yes.
So at Redwood University, I love that notion. It sounds like y'all have really formalized the resources and the training environment there at Redwood. Is that right, Steve?
Yes, Redwood University has been a great addition to our new hires and to people like myself that's been here for a few years. But we bring people in from the outside and we teach them what they need to know and give them all aspects of the company and how we're going to get stuff done and help them with their job. And it really helps them become better people for themselves and also better employees.
Hitting the road running. I love that. And to our listeners and audience members, to anyone that's currently transitioning or getting ready to transition, I think one of the things I'm taking away from Carlos and Steve is, when you determine what type of environment or culture you want to be in, make sure you include that on your due diligence as you're engaging and asking questions of your potential employers. Those interviews, that should be two-way communication, right? They should be asking you questions and you should be asking them and vetting them as a potential employer. That's something I know I missed the boat on when I was exiting the Air Force back in 2002. Okay, so let's keep driving here, Carlos. Just like I did there, looking back on our own transitions and then sharing those gaps that we maybe uncovered at the last minute or way too late. Those are powerful things to share back with folks that are maybe currently transitioning or getting ready to transition. So what are a couple of things, Carlos, you'd mention to folks and suggest to folks, pieces of advice from your transition to folks that are getting ready to do their own?
Yes, I would say use the resources provided to you. I know for us in the Navy, we have what it's called TAP classes. I don't know if the other branches have it as well, but that was a resource that provided me with so much information about separating and what job opportunities there's going to be, like where to live and all that. I would strongly advise on using those resources because, I mean, like I said, I started 6 months out. I had a whole 6 months to plan out exactly where I was going to be when I left that base for the last time. So definitely use those resources, and many of those resources too, they don't just stop once you leave that base. You can still like a year or 6 months out and go back to those resources and keep using them. I mean, there's many companies that offer like free trainings or classes. I mean, you're not gonna get a full degree, of course, but take advantage of those. They're just gonna add to your package and you're gonna look better for an employer. So definitely use your resources.
Well said. And I think TAP, the Transition Assistance Program, I believe is what it stands for. I think it's
Yes.
gone through, Carlos, we had it in Air Force, and in talking with
Okay.
my folks that have recently departed across all branches, I think it's really been revised quite a bit, especially with some of the gaps have emerged, post 9/11, that have helped them strengthen that. So that's a great call out, that TAP, lean on
Yes.
those resources. One other quick follow-up question, Carlos, when you were transitioning, going back to open mind, did you first identify geographically where you wanted to be, or were you kind of focused in on industry first and then other factors, kind of fell in place? Where did you start at the top of your kind of your priority poll, for lack of a better phrase?
Yes. So first, I want to know where I wanted to live. Because I finished out in Washington State, and I knew I don't want to be there anymore. So I want to come back to Wisconsin. And then I found out where in Wisconsin I want to be. Because I can't just pick a random spot and get to Wisconsin and be like, well, there's a job right there. So I wanted to know what city I wanted to be in, what kind of neighborhood I wanted to be in. So all of that, I mean, those are key details that you're going to have to live with for at least 6 months after you get out. If you go sign a contract for an apartment or whatever, you're going to have to live in that area. So know where you want to go, find what job you want to do, and know what your range is on wages, because I feel like some people didn't really think about that much. And then it affects them because now they live in an area where they can't really afford. And they're like, hey, I'm struggling for money. So definitely look into that because that is your life and you control that. I mean,
excellent feedback there. That targeting, the active, focused, deliberate targeting when it comes to where you want to be, what you want to do, where you want to live, so important. And for many, including myself, it was an afterthought. All right, Steve, coming to you. What would you share with someone, advice or otherwise, that's either recently transitioned or about to transition, or maybe they're in the middle of it?
Yeah, I think, like Carlos said, I think, for myself, when I got out, I wanted, because in the military and in my life in general, wherever I go, I want to make a difference, right? So when I went to talk to different companies and we had several different interviews and several offers, but I wanted to make sure that it was a good fit for me, not a good fit for them, because I wanted to make a difference wherever I was at. So I separated out in San Diego area, out in California, Camp Pendleton, or Oceanside. So I decided I wanted to stay in the area for a while, and then I went to use my GI Bill. I went back to college and stuff a little bit to take some classes to learn that, and so I stayed in the area. So just understand what you want to do and focus in on it, and then talk to different people out there. And like separation, they have a lot of good counselors and a lot of people there that can help you and help you understand what you're going to what to do and what to look for, and utilize your military training and the benefits that you have. Like a couple of ones I leaned on, I leaned on like the American Legion and the VFW Post, a couple of organizations I'm still active with today that went in, met with them, and they have some people there that can really help you, along with some state and local government, because I was able to go to college, use my GI Bill, and then also the state, so that it was a pretty no-brainer for me as far as when I got out, what I was going to do for the first couple of years when I got out.
Great advice. And it sounds simple what I'm hearing from both of you, but again, I didn't take advantage of it. Finding those resources you have, whether it's military provided, whether it's employer provided, or what Steve just touched on there, local government provided. Knowledge is power. Learn them and then leverage them. Really helps make the transition a lot easier. One little tip for any of our listeners, audience members that may be looking at the Atlanta area, right? We live in the metro Atlanta area. It's like 26 counties, really big. But there's a group called Vetlanta. And it's a club. It's not a nonprofit. It's just a club. It's really meant to vet all these resources out there while providing networking opportunities for folks in the Metro Atlanta area, veterans in the Metro Atlanta area. So y'all check that out, vetlanta.org, I believe. And Amanda Luton, if you happen to be in the audience, I'd love for you to drop that link in the Q&A in the chat. Thank you, my dear. All right. So Carlos and Steve, I want to keep driving here. Carlos, I think when I think back at different journeys, whether it's military related, job related, you name it, those eureka moments where, man, I wish I had done it different. I wish I had done it this way. I wish I knew that, whatever. Carlos, what's something that comes to mind when along those lines, something you would have done different as part of your transition?
Honestly, I think if I would have taken a little bit more of my time and taken advantage of those extra courses or classes that were offered to me, I think that would have definitely helped me build a stronger package. Not that I didn't have a good transition, but I think that would have definitely been something that I could have taken with me for the rest of my life, and it would have benefited me even more.
It's such a great, things are coming at us so fast, right? And by the way, we're still in the military, right? So have jobs to do. So really getting one of the things I heard or thought of as you shared that is really getting, if you're disciplined already, getting like super disciplined in that transition time, really planning out your schedule so you can really prioritize, where to spend, how to systematize it, and how to really focus on those resources. That's going to help make the overall process easier. It's excellent insights there, Carlos. Steve, same question. What's something you might have done differently?
Sure. What I would have done is I waited a little bit too long to go through the mind process and doing some more research. So start thinking about this as long as you can. If you got a year, 6 months, 9 months to really think about that and utilize the resources that the military and all the other places will find for you there. And then when you're deciding what you want to do for your career, reach out to the organizations. Redwood's a great place to reach out to. We really recruit heavily through veterans, and I think every military person, regardless of the branch of the service, all know logistics, because in the Marine Corps, they're in the Navy and the Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, you have to be involved in logistics because at least your own gear, your own stuff. So everybody's involved. There's a lot of logistics that you do just as being in the military. So that's why logistics is such a good fit for people when they get out of the service, because everybody did it, no matter what your MOS was. So I think just take advantage of that and look at your surroundings. And if you don't know what you want to do, like I said, just talk to people. Reach out to resources as Vets to Industry. I've researched that site. That's a very good site. We have the local groups like you do, Scott, down in the Milwaukee, Chicago area also.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to add before I got back and pose a couple final questions to you, Steve. As I remembered, I think you are in the Milwaukee area, right?
Oh, yeah, Milwaukee.
Okay, so I was touting Atlanta earlier. So Kathy and I both were. I've been to Milwaukee. We did some work way back in when I was in metal stamping with Briggs and Stratton. At the time, great company. How great! I'm sure the Milwaukee market is an opportunity-rich environment for our veterans and our transition military members. You want to touch on that for a second, Steve?
Sure. I'm originally from Idaho, and I've lived in a lot of different states. And the reason I'm here in the Midwest, and I've made this my home now, I've lived in Wisconsin longer than I've lived anywhere else, is there's about 8 or 9 states, 10 states that is the heartbeat of the supply chain for the United States. So as I was moving in different parts of the country, I know that for opportunity-wise, for positions, and actually every large logistics company has some type of either headquarters or some type of big office in the Chicago, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Detroit area. So I think in Milwaukee, I call it a small big town. We're a little over 1 million people here. We're 90 miles from Chicago. I love Chicago. It's a beautiful city. But I think that Milwaukee is a good place, and there's a lot of job opportunities here.
Agreed. I appreciate that perspective. Y'all check out Milwaukee. Do your homework on the cities, as Carlos and Steve both are saying. I love what Steve shared there, looking at 10 states that play really big roles in the supply chain industry. Love that. Okay, so we're going to get kind of more tactical here, Carlos, as we start to wrap up this middle segment. Thinking of tools, right? Tools. What are some of the tools or a tool that you really leaned on to help get you through to your transition, Carlos?
Yeah, so when I was looking for jobs, I was kind of like Monster and those job websites. And then somebody told me about LinkedIn, and I never really thought of LinkedIn as a place where you go look for jobs. And they're like, yeah, you can get a premium account, you can post your resume. I mean, you can put all your information there and people can come see it. And I did. I mean, that was the strongest tool I had. People were reaching out to me instead of me reaching out to people. So the offers were coming in. And that's actually where I found my job that I'm at right now, because I didn't see that job posted anywhere else. It was just on LinkedIn. I saw it there, gave them a call, submitted my resume. I mean, I did it all on there. I didn't
Really?
even have to go on their website. Yep, everything through LinkedIn. Then the recruiter called me up. We set up some interviews, and I did that whole process after that.
Wow. Okay. So a non-endorsed LinkedIn spot here. That's
Yeah.
that's a testimonial, Carlos, but it really speaks to the power of that platform. And it's laser focused on the professional side, right, of social networking.
Yes.
One other thing, Steve or Carlos, if y'all know, and if none of us know, maybe we can get one of our audience members to look at it. And Glormar, I appreciate your question. I'm gonna get to it here in a second. But is for an advanced LinkedIn membership, like a sales or a navigator feature, is it still free for active duty military members? Do y'all know?
I know you could get a premium account for, it's either up to 6 months or a year
For free.
for
Is
free.
that right?
Yep, for free.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that might
so
save you, Carlos, what, a couple $100, right?
yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, I've never paid for it, so I'm not sure exactly what the amount is, but it's definitely a great tool. I mean, it's out there for any vet to take advantage of it.
So listeners, audience members, that is a practical, tactical tip right there. Make sure you're not paying, especially if you're still on active duty, paying for LinkedIn. Check it out. If you have a issue, let us know. We'll see if we can find the right program option channel, so you get your benefit there. So Carlos, great. Thank you so much for sharing. And Cindy Palmer in the audience. Hello, Cindy. She is confirming as well that it is free upgrade for our military members and veterans. Okay, Steve, talking tools. What's a couple things that come to mind that's helped you in your transition?
Yeah, well, I was out a little bit earlier before LinkedIn and the internet and all that, because I so what I did, and I do it today, is I'm a big network person. So I started going to different meetings, whether it be Chamber of Commerce. I got involved in the JCs, all sorts of places, some traffic clubs at the time, and CSCMP, or used to be LCLM, and just started the networking that way. And the reason I'm here today is that the network that I've developed and met, some of the people at Redwood, knew them from past jobs or just past acquaintances. And I believe in a strong network. You to just network with everybody that you meet. Everybody wants to help, especially if you have a need, if you ask questions. So I just a big networking person that I like to go to a lot of different organizations, a lot of seminars, a lot of meetings.
I'm with you. And to your point, Steve, we can't sleep on the in-person, the physical networking, right? We can have it both ways. We can lean on LinkedIn and other virtual, Vets to Industry, Vetlanta, a lot of other virtual or digital groups, while also meeting people and picking up market intel in person. That's a great tip that's often overlooked. By the way, let's see here. Cindy Palmer, thanks so much for being here. Thanks also for promoting this event. Says that military spouses can also get a free year for every PCS. That is a great tip I wasn't aware of. And otherwise, Amanda's saying it's $70 a month. So y'all check out, use the benefits that are afforded our veterans and our military members, and save that money for other things like kids, food, clothing, budget. Okay. So I've got a question here from Glormar, and Glormar, so great to have you here. We're going to use her question to kind of wrap this middle segment. Carlos, Steve, thanks for sharing so much great information. I want to pose this to y'all though. Glormar says, quote, "My questions are more related to job opportunities in the field. I have a lot of experience managing suppliers, working on sustainability as a program manager, mostly in the Air Force, and owned a car hauling company with my husband, who is also an independent contractor for FedEx Custom Critical. And he also looks like currently works with a company pulling containers at LA ports. How about that? She says she loves the field, but I don't know where do I fit. My strong network is unfortunately limited to the Air Force and Space Force in LA, but I would like to relocate and switch industries in the next couple of years. What do you recommend? So Carlos and Steve, not that we're going to come up with $1 million answer here. Maybe we can compare notes with Glorimar after today's session. But Carlos, any thoughts come to mind when it comes to looking at other industries and trying to make the switch?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like she has a lot of experience. I mean, you can pretty much go anywhere with that experience. I mean, it looks like you have been on that field for many years as it is. So honestly, I would look for something that you find the most fitting to you. So definitely look into what the options are, where you want to go and say, hey, does that fit with what I want to do in the future? Look into it, research it, talk to people who are in that industry, and make a choice.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And I would add, Steve, I'll get your take here too, but I would add supplier management programs are very popular in global supply chain, and get to your point of having a lot of experience in that area. I don't think you'd be limited by having your network, mainly being on the West Coast and California. So I would lean heavily and look to leverage that supplier management experience you have. Steve, any other thoughts come to your mind?
Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit about what we do here at our organization. So we look to hire people all the time, and we're actively hiring. Our company is growing. We keep expanding our touch points with our clients. So reach out to like Redwood, redwoodlogistics.com, getting to our HR recruiting department, and they just talk to you. It's just like we're having a conversation. They'll just talk to you, talk about what you want to do and what your experiences are, and give you some options that we would possibly be a fit for our organization. And I'm sure there's other organizations out there soon, but we do a really good job on vetting our people and making sure, like I said, that they're fulfilling what they want to do, and it's fulfilling a need that we have. So it's a good win-win situation, because we want everybody to come in this organization here at our organization at Redwood to have a good experience, and hopefully they make a career out of it. So I would just reach out to some great organizations and just talk to their HR recruiting division.
That's right. And Steve also said, don't lose this in the shuffle. Redwood's hiring. So I check that out and use as a benchmark, right? If it were me, I want a culture that really cares about the veteran transition experience and bakes that into their onboarding and recruiting programs. Okay, Carlos and Steve, I've had such a great time learning more about your transitions, getting your information and insights and advice to our listeners here today. Great question, by the way, Glorimar. Make sure you reach out. But as we start to wrap this middle segment, one of my thoughts that comes to mind, and I'd love to get your quick response as we wrap. I've heard it's mentioned 1,000 different ways, but deeds, not words, right? Deeds, not words. Time is so incredibly valuable. And if you've heard anything here today, it's, use that time investing in yourself, getting ready to really successfully transition for you and your family, right? But your final thought, Carlos, if you had to challenge our audience to do anything, what's your final quick thought?
I would say, hey, go for it. Don't be afraid. It can be scary, but go for it.
Make it happen. I love that, Carlos. And Steve, your final thought.
Yeah, you believe in yourself, and you just got to keep going forward. Just believe in yourself, and you'll have great success.
Well said, Steve and Carlos. Steve Rose, Director of Strategic Sales with our host, Redwood Logistics, also a Marine veteran, and Carlos Rivera Madrid, Logistics Coordinator with Orbis Corporation, also a veteran of the United States Navy. Thank you both.
Semper Fi.
Thank you.
All right. What a home run segment here today. Gosh, Kathy brought it. Carlos and Steve just brought it. And hey, we got a home run hitter in this next segment as we come down the home stretch. And we're going to focus on providing best practices in mental health and wellness. So I want to welcome in our final guest here today, Dr. Rhonda Bumpenza Zimmerman, Director of Fitness and Wellness with Global Trans. Rhonda. Hey,
Hi.
Rhonda, how you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me to join the panel today. And I would like to thank you all for your service for our country. Those of us have not served, we don't understand your lived experiences, but we can honor you and support you in ways that really are meaningful, because you really do, you are of such service to us. And it's just worthy of acknowledging the sacrifice you've made in your lives and helping support you in the workplace. So thank you. Thank you for the time.
Well, I really appreciate how you opened there. I've had the great fortune, much like Kathy, to know and have collaborated with you for quite some time, and also consume your thought leadership and you're really your purpose-led programming that you do regularly. You're quite the subject matter expert, especially when it comes to today's focus topic of mental health and wellness. So, and I think it needs to be said, your father, I believe, Dr. Rhonda, is a Vietnam veteran as well, right?
Yes, correct. And if you don't mind me showcasing a little bit,
Please.
like a lot of what we've learned about post-traumatic stress disorder is on the backs of our veterans from Vietnam. So, when my father came out of the service, due to the combat exposure that he experienced, there was a lot of moral injury and like this internal dialogue that he wasn't quite sure how to work through, and thankfully, mental health services, particularly through our veterans organizations, we really are showcasing how best to support the whole person after they're transitioning from this very high state of, mission focused lifestyle to that more civilian lifestyle again. And that's a very quick transition, as Carlos and Steve were alluding to, like looking 6 months before that transition, like not everybody has that time or that capacity when they're in it to think long term. So, when for my family, my father really struggled, and it wasn't until he was in his 50s, which is probably when we started to think about mental health and learn more about PTSD and what, traumatic brain injuries are. Like, we really didn't have an understanding of that back then. And as a result, maybe he wasn't coping or relating to us, his coworkers and society in a way that really felt fulfilling for him, because there were some wounds. There were physical wounds, obviously, from being shot and he almost died. And then there were psychological wounds that he never talked about. And if I could just share really quickly, I had moved to Georgia back in 2000, and my dad, he's about 80, he's going to be 80 shortly. We visited Arlington. What's the cemetery there in Georgia?
Gosh, I should.
Anyway, it's Arlington is coming to my mind, but it wasn't that. Anyway, whatever that place is there, I went with him, and that was the first time he ever talked about his service, because it was very hush hush. You don't talk about it. And my mother was like really nervous about how, he was going to have some flashbacks or whatever, which kind of had happened during his transition back into the workplace. But having those conversations and just listening to him really did help him heal. So for those folks that aren't comfortable talking about it, if I could just use my father as an example, as he began to socialize with other veterans through the VA programs and talk about what he experienced without, that mental toughness that he needed during service, it really let him, relax his shoulders and show up in a way where he feels fulfilled and connected again in civilian life. So I think it's important to, when our veterans leave and transition back into civilian life, it might not be today, it might not be next year, it might not be 5 years, but maybe at some point they're going to need some support to maybe work through some of the things that they experienced, which created, an environment for them that maybe at certain times they don't understand how important their role was, and just showing care and compassion for them and allowing them to feel it for themselves too, for their psychological health is really important. So
If I could, and I have Googled the cemetery. Maybe I've got a blind spot. It's not the first time, but hey, really quick, and I appreciate you sharing and making it personal on the front end. But one of the key important lessons learned from what you shared there is it's okay to raise your hand and ask for help, whether, to your point a minute ago, whether you're on the first day of your transition, if you haven't quite transitioned yet, if you're 6 months in, 6 years in, it is okay. And I think that's part of the stigma that we've got to continue to chip away at and make sure folks know that it's okay to raise their hand and get out and use those resources and that assistance that you've earned as a military member, right?
Mm-hmm. Some of the resources that I sent you are for just that purpose, but it's how best do we protect our veterans, as they're re-entering the work phase, and helping them really, Scott, think about their most basic needs, because as a service person yourself, you're busy on the mission, the group, the focus, and you're less me focused, you're less Scott focused. And sometimes that mentality can come back into the civilian life. And like, how do you deal with that? Like, okay, so now like you're not accustomed to thinking about yourself. Like, are you eating healthy? Are you sleeping? Sleep is so important. We know that. Are you exercising because you were so active? Like, exercise is really helpful to our mindset. Do we have a safe place to live?
Yep.
Do we have finance? We talked about finances. Like, that's a big deal. A lot of food insecurities are very prevalent in the young veteran population.
So Dr. Rhonda, let me ask you a couple quick things here. And by the way, the resource list that Rhonda has assembled for our audience, I think our Redwood partners here can make sure that everyone that signed up gets that, links and all. I think there's some really important, the National Center for PTSD, online resources, the vet centers for readjustment counseling. These are resources that you want to have, on hand as you need them. So speaking or looking specifically at these transition periods, I've got a list here from you, Rhonda, of things that we got to encourage and support. And I think you started to dive into that a moment ago. Talk more about this list of things we got to keep front of mind as we transition.
Well, if we're talking about psychological safety, we have to understand that our mind needs care, just like our physical body. So I wanted to point out to folks, because there's still some stigma there, talk therapy is really, really helpful. And some of the most efficacious evidence-based therapies that have been shown to help support our thinking skills, our emotional skills, are things like cognitive behavioral therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, EMDR, dialectic behavioral therapy. And, some folks are like, don't necessarily, maybe there's some cultural barriers there or some stigmas about, okay, what is therapy all about? Let me just say, when you are open to building a therapeutic relationship with somebody who understands you, that will not judge you, that's just there as a sounding board, as a best friend, as a support service, they can help you kind of distance yourself from maybe some thoughts that you're having during your transitions where you're struggling and you don't know quite which way to go. It could be even, what jobs you're looking at or where you want to live. Like, just having that person there to help you talk through some of the things, the chit chatter in your head, is definitely shown to be helpful in healing and moving you through whatever is next for you. So, some people who, I've gone to therapy before. I think it's important to understand that, just the different strokes for different folks. So it's important to find whatever works for you, because we're all individuals. And while all veterans may have gone through similar experiences as a group, you're still an individual person. So valuing yourself for where you are and finding services to meet you where you are right now, that's something to be championed, and it's not something to be ashamed of.
Right.
And actually, that's very courageous. I think, showing your vulnerability as it shows up is something that we need to champion. We need to ask lots of questions. and then support our veterans and their families too. Because when we take care of ourselves, we collectively then in turn can take care of each other.
So well said. A couple of thoughts that come to mind as I was listening to you share your thoughts there. I think all too often the military spouses and military family members are kind of lost in the shuffle. You know, we got to make sure they're all part of this transition. To your point, they all have their own common needs and unique needs, and we got to keep that in mind. But question for you, Rhonda, do you think the phrase mental health and wellness it also has been stigmatized a bit? I mean, we all have mental health and wellness. It's just like we all have a diet. We all have heart health. I mean, is this kind of some of the things we got to get around and lean into, would you say?
Yeah, so mental health, definitely there's a stigma. I mean, if I could go back to my father, like that was frowned upon, seeking service. That was, you keep your thoughts to yourself and you don't have a discussion because that was a sign of weakness. So I like to think of mental health as brain health, just like washing the stuff away that kind of gets stuck in our head that really may be limiting us and preventing us to feel joy and experience whatever is next in life, because sometimes we can get caught in some negative thinking patterns, which biologically is just of our nature. I mean, if you go back to our, back in time, we were hunters and gatherers. So while our thinking patterns of fear, what do they call that? The stress response, fight, flight, or freeze, like that's very integrated, when a person's in service. So when you come back and you transition back into this, everyday civilian life, like some of those emotions are still within the body. So like just understanding that anxiety that you may be feeling at work really might not have anything to do with the job itself. Maybe there's something you need to talk through with someone and just, find whatever feels fulfilling for you to be of service. And I think that is really super critical to contemplate when you feel a little lost, you feel a little stuck, you feel a little low energy. And some of the resources that Steve and Carlos and you've mentioned, I think they're, worthy of championing and talking about again. Like there's so much information, there's so much support now for everyone. And I think the more that we have honest conversations and don't think of mental health as something to shy away from, our brain is a universe within a universe within a universe, and all these different pathways are there, and sometimes we just may go down a road that may lead to wonderful opportunities, and some that may make us pause a second and feel some anxiety or maybe even little depressive symptoms, but know that that's just a road and there's something thereafter. So
that's
working through those is really
so Dr. Rhonda, I love it. I wish we had a couple hours with all of our panelists here today. An important note, and I think this audience here, being the niche that it is, would all, recognize this fact. All veterans don't experience PTSD. It's not solely impacting the veterans community either, right?
true.
But that aside, we all of us, kind of going back to a point we made a second ago, have a mental health journey that we're on. And to that end, I want to ask you specifically, you've kind of touched on this a couple of times, whether it is movement, getting outdoors, getting your power walk in or your jog in or whatever it is, getting in those omega-3 fats, which, I feel smarter just saying that, Rhonda, getting your sunlight, whatever it is, it's important for us, veterans or non-veterans, you name it, to seek out those elements that make us feel healthy. Is that right? Speak to that a little bit, if you would.
Yes. So it's kind of like, thinking about what are some things that help you release maybe some negative thought patterns that you have, or anxiety, worrying about what's going to happen an hour or 2 hours from now, or ruminating on things that happened in the past. Trying to be present can be really tough when there's a lot of emotions involved. So I would say to folks, the more you can be present, each and every day, and find particular activities that you enjoy. Could be things, from your childhood, going for a walk, going out, smelling flowers, laying down in the grass, being like a kid again, laughing, getting on a skateboard, or, reading a book, looking up some jokes, or watching, a comedy, or maybe a movie that will maybe bring about some tears. Just getting in touch with, things that maybe take us away from some of the maybe not so helpful thinking patterns is really helpful. If I could say, one of the quick things that I recommend to folks often is the sensory exercise. And that's something that you can do. Nobody has to know you're doing it. All of us can do it. So when you're starting to have some feelings or thought patterns that aren't really helpful, it's just really quickly look around or visualize 5 things that bring you joy in your life. So you're going to be present there. So for those seconds that you're focused on that, your body's going to respond a little different. There's going to be a change in emotions and energy. Or 4 things that you enjoy listening to, a loved one, a favorite song, a salute, anything of that nature, a smell, certain things, that aromatherapy, or smell of a favorite dish, or, things that you enjoy tasting, a favorite food, and physical touch, things that, your hair on your face, or the softness of a shirt, or your feet grounded in nature. All those things can help us be present, as well as some breathing, and help us show up as our best self for not only ourselves, but for each other collectively. So that's something I really think that people can try, and it's, no one has to know you're doing it. So that helps take away from some of the worrying about what somebody thinks about whatever we're doing.
Dr. Rhonda, I'm telling you, that is powerful advice there. I'll tell you to maybe share too much information on my end. At times in my journey where you have those really heavy days, right, and stressful days, maybe it's a day full of decisions, or maybe it was back when I was in the Air Force and you just had those bad days. Don't laugh at me, but soaking my feet in really hot water, for an hour or so, and kind of unplugging from whatever it was, that's been one of my personal go-tos to kind of that practice you were just sharing. And you'd be surprised how much the simple things and deliberate simple things you do makes you feel so much better, and puts you in a better position to tackle whatever it is you still have to tackle. So I'm so glad that you shared that here today. As we start to kind of come down the home stretch with Dr. Rhonda Papenza-Zimmerman, I want to ask you about, you wrote recently, and whether it's podcasts or social media content or appearances, different shows beyond what you do at Global Trans. I love all the thought leadership you put out there, but you wrote about the importance of be there for you too, every single day, because that phrase, we all know, I'll be there for you, I've got your back, all that stuff. We got to have our own back, if I understand you correctly. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So the song Bon Jovi, I'm a huge fan of Bon Jovi. I'll be there for you. These 5 words, I swear to you, that's kind of what brought that about. And that goes back to that, being of service. Our veterans are so programmed or committed to being of service that sometimes, you may forget to take care of you. So how can you be of service to you? How can you facilitate living a life every moment you can that brings you joy, whatever that looks like for you? So I think, it's really important that you champion you speak up when there's something that's on your mind. You have a confidant, maybe a spiritual advisor, or somebody that you can share those thoughts that maybe you just need to be curious about, and not judging, if maybe you're having a substance issue, or find yourself isolating yourself from others. Understand that we're all humans relating to each other based upon our lived experience. So relating to someone what your basic needs are is really important, because I don't know what's going to help you, Scott, unless you tell me. But I'm also not going to know if I don't create space and invite you to share what you need from me. So I think having those conversations with folks, what do I need today for me? because we're not mind readers, but sometimes we think we have assumptions about what a person needs. Maybe that's not what they need. So communicating, building therapeutic relationships for ourselves by explaining and sharing, what will help us in our personal success, our job success. And as we continue to transition in life is really, really super important.
So we only have a couple more minutes with you here, Dr. Rhonda. I want to ask you a question, and I hope I don't catch you by surprise. And if we want to answer this after today's session, it's perfectly fine. But, we're on the cusp of yet another school year, right? I tell you, our kids go back to school next week, barely into the first part of August. And for some of our audience members, right, some of our veterans that are transitioning that might still have kids, school age kids, or military members that are not only dealing with transitioning and finding a new job, but also dealing with the stresses that come with, getting their kids back in school and, dealing with their children's stressors, right? Any quick advice? And that's a bad question, but any advice you would offer that may be different than what you've shared when it comes to, helping our kids cope through, what can be stressful times for them?
Yes, so that's where I would go to the whole telehealth conversation. It's funny, well, not funny. I had a conversation actually with a military service personnel last night who had called me at home, and she was actually talking about just this. Her teens were going through some struggles with some health self-harm issues. Again, understanding that there are resources out there to support your children and trusting the process, which is really challenging based upon different belief systems. But I think having faith, having hope that there's support out there that will help your children as they transition. Maybe they're having some behavioral health issues. There are people trained to help them, and understanding that our children, they're very reactive and they tend to respond or make decisions based upon their emotions because their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed in that. We all know about that now. Until you're about 26, you don't have the capacity to think, to reason, to think critically, to problem solve, to see that, oh yes, there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. So I think the best thing to do is to seek services for your children. And I know that for veterans and their family, there are resources out there for our children. I do want to bring up one group that I didn't leave in the comments before to you, the Steve Cohen Military Family Clinic. So for people that maybe have some financial barriers all throughout the country, there are resources for not only you, but your family members. And when I say family members, that includes your children, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your roommate, and anyone that's in your circle that may need some support. And, we know that with COVID-19, our children experienced a lot of social isolation. And when parents felt the need to seek counseling, the wait was 2-3 months at a time. So I just want to put it out there to everyone listening now. If you're going to seek services, understand that there's going to be a time frame where you're probably going to have to wait. The intake process, might need to go through it 1 or 2 times, the assessment process, but understand that in the long run, it's worth it. But again, in that moment, again, teaching your kids the thing that I just talked about with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sensory exercise, progressive muscle relaxation. There are a lot of things we can do, teach our kids just to breathe, diaphragmatic breathing, and just step back, and support them where they are and listening to their concerns and what they're feeling without our biases entering that, and then facilitating care for whatever that looks like for them.
So much goodness in this last 15-20 minutes here. Big thanks to Dr. Rhonda Penza Zimmerman, Director of Fitness and Wellness with Global Trans. Hey, really quick, last question, and then we're going to start to begin to adjourn. How can folks connect with you, Dr. Rhonda?
Sure. So, Scott, I'm on LinkedIn pretty regularly. That's the best way. And if you go under my contact information, you can see how my email. I also do the podcast Work Life 360, which is focused on mental health and well-being in the workspace. And then also reach out to me. I have a website, Planting Seeds for Healthy, Happy Living. And that's just, again, where we can facilitate conversations about what's popping up in our life and how best to learn from one another, from our lived experiences. Because as you know, with storytelling, we might hear something that might prompt a thought that might prompt us to take action, which just can change the whole trajectory of our life.
Yep.
So.
Man, I'll tell you how you're getting sleep at night. So we're gonna switch gears here in just a second and wrap. But if you would, Rhonda, you mentioned a slew of resources that you personally are leading, from your LinkedIn profile, your podcast, your website. If you drop those in the comments with hyperlinks, and we encourage folks to connect with all of our panelists here today. So thanks so much, Rhonda, for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Honored
You
to
bet.
be here with you all. Thank you.
All right, folks. Wow. These three segments here today have offered so much unique value, common value, with folks that are clearly passionate about the advice and perspective and expertise that they're sharing. I want to bring back on Steve Rose with Redwood, our fearless host here today. Steve, I think you're still with us here. Steve, these 90 minutes have flown right past like we knew they would. We've already made sure folks know how to connect with you in Redwood. I appreciate you dropping the links there in the comments. And as we talked on the front end, really appreciate you and the Redwood team, investing in and hosting these conversations. What was Steve, if you look back over the last 90 minutes, something that you or other hosts, panelists shared, what was one of your favorite takeaways here today, Steve?
One of my favorite takeaway is just the overall transition for military personnel as they're getting out, about how it can be very easy, very positive, and just reach out to resources that you've learned about today or the different organizations that can help you. So I think that was one of the best things that I took away from today. Agreed.
Folks, deeds, not words. Take action. Act on this. I think is very actionable advice we heard from Kathy, from Steve, from Carlos, from Dr. Rhonda. Also want to call out Cindy Palmer. So Cindy Palmer is a volunteer leader with Vets to Industry, again, a nonprofit that's a clearinghouse in many ways for networking, for support services, you name it. Cindy, I'd love for you to drop your LinkedIn in the chat as well and help folks connect with you and all the great things you're doing. As we shared, we start to wrap here. Big thanks to Steve and the Redwood team for hosting. Big thanks to all of our panelists. Man, Kathy, Steve, Carlos, Dr. Rhonda, everything they shared. Thanks for the folks that had time to connect and share in the comments, in the chat. Microsoft, Steve, I think Microsoft's really going to be thankful about the testimonial LinkedIn's gotten over the last 90 minutes. But big thanks to all of our attendees as well. And, it goes without saying, but big thanks to all those that have served, continuing to serve. Hey, folks, build that network. Distill, Carlos and Steve, y'all can do it. Believe in yourself. Seek out those resources, use those resources. Check out vets2industry.org. Get on there. They've got some powerful networking sessions where hundreds of people come out. I think once every month or so. Cindy Palmer can be a resource for you, but check that out. Check out Vetlanta if you're interested in the Atlanta area. But whatever it is, on behalf of my co-host, Steve Rose, Scott Luton signing off for now, challenging each and every one of y'all. Hey, do good, give forward, and be the change. And with that said, we see you next time. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
All right.